What's a secret you have sworn never to tell, but you'll gladly share anonymously on the internet? Story 1. My father had a severe accident during his time in the Navy. He always told everyone that he was working a few floors up above a ladder that led to all the levels in the ship and fell straight down onto his feet. Supposedly, there were nets between each floor to prevent such accidents, but they had been removed for some reason. As a result, he broke most of the bones in his feet and legs and was flown to a hospital. He was in thigh-high cast for a long time and was honorably discharged from the Navy. This was before I was born, so everyone accepted the story. A few months ago, he told me the real story. I'd always suspected there was something he was hiding from everyone, based on how he spoke of the time surrounding the accident and the eerie way he talked about his shipmates. He had apparently been given a Purple Heart, and when I asked why he would have received one, he clammed up. My father was a UDT, underwater demolition technician, during his time in the service. In a time of peace, he and the other divers likely swam off the coast of a foreign nation. He would never confirm the actual waters, with a mission to take out certain ships. They swam in total darkness, planted their charges, and had to immediately swim away. He was shot at several times, and once he told me that something enormous bumped him in the dark. One of the charges detonated prematurely, wiping out nearly all of his tethered team. My father's legs were shattered, and the only other living team member bravely brought him back to the ship. They dragged 6 bodies, or what was left of them, with them in the dark and silent ocean. Those bodies were immediately cut free and purposefully sunk to protect the mission. The gentleman who saved my father died on the ship, leaving only lucky number 8, Ceramic. Father was reluctantly flown to 2 hospitals, one of which, brand new, turned him away because the head surgeon believed my father would die and didn't want to tarnish the operating room's reputation. When he was finally being treated, his superiors refused to inform his parents or my mother, whom he had married just a week before, of his location. He suspects they even planned to let him die. One of his commanding officers saved his life by keeping constant watch and later confirmed there had been discussions about pulling his plug prematurely. My dad lived, but his story remains shrouded in secrecy. He has nightmares about the ocean and cannot swim in semi-darkness. The officer who watched over him paid away a few years ago. We'll never see his Purple Heart, and I can't share this with anyone because no one would believe me, or they might blame him for simply doing his job. He acted under orders, yet due to the nature of those orders, he'll never be recognized as a hero. There is no memorial for those 7 other divers. One day, I want to write a book about it and fight to get his Purple Heart recognized so he can have closure before he pays. Story 2. When I was 20, I was cycling along a designated path meant for both bikes and walkers. Up ahead, I noticed an older couple, probably in their 50s. As I approached to paw them, the man suddenly stepped towards my bike and tried to push me off, yelling something about how bikes didn't belong there. I swerved just in time and avoided him. This is where I made my mistake. I stopped, got off my bike, and angrily confronted the man. I shouted at him, swearing and gesturing wildly, baffled by his behavior. He started advancing toward me, looking stern. My adrenaline spiked as he was a large man, and I'm only 5 feet 8 inches and slim. However, as a boxer in training at the time, I probably should have handled things differently. He threw a punch at my head, but I sidestepped and countered instinctively. He dropped to the ground. Without waiting, I got back on my bike and sped away. The next day, the local newspaper ran a story about a couple being violently attacked by a masked assailant while on a peaceful evening stroll. The article detailed how the man had heroically defended his wife, but was viciously struck down. It claimed the attack left him so injured that he required reconstructive surgery, ruining their long-awaited vacation. Part of me felt he deserved some form of punishment for his actions. However, the experience was an eye-opener. I realized how easily events can be twisted, and it taught me never to fully trust the media again. Story 3. When I was 23, I made a mistake I've never been able to share with anyone. I had an inappropriate encounter with my aunt, who was 46 at the time. We were stranded together for 2 days, and what began as light flirting escalated into something I never thought would happen. Looking back, I now realize she always knew I had a crush on her, as she would often tease me with compliments. During those 2 days, we grew closer in ways I'm too ashamed to detail, and it became an experience that I still think about, even after all these years. I haven't seen her in over a decade. She's not avoiding me. We simply live far apart and rarely attend the same family events. Her husband, my uncle, is one of the kindest people I know, which only deepens my guilt. I'm confident nothing like that will ever happen again, but it's a secret I'll take to my grave. Story 4. When I was 17, I went to a college frat party a few towns away. My friends who had brought me there got into a fight and left me stranded without a ride home. A guy at the party offered to drive me home, and naively, I agreed. He told me I'd have to wait until the party was over, so at 2 a.m., he started kicking everyone out of the house. We ended up in the basement to clear out the last few partiers, and he told me to wait there while he finished up. I waited, unaware of what was about to happen. When he returned, he had a predatory grin and started making advances. I rejected him, which made him angry. He pulled my hair, forced me over the pool table, and tore my clothes. He grabbed a pool cue and threatened me with violence, saying I'd enjoy it. In a desperate attempt to escape, I started talking fast. I said I knew his name, his scholarship status, and his family background. I warned him that if he hurt me, I'd tell everyone, his family, the press, and his school. I told him he might as well kill me because I'd never stop exposing him. He punched me in the face, told me to leave, and let me go. I walked 22 miles through a dangerous city in the middle of the night, consumed by fear and anger. 2 weeks later, I returned to the frat house, dressed provocatively, pretending to be drunk, and asked for him. His frat brothers left the room, and I was alone with him again. I flirted, kissed him, and got him to let his guard down. Just as I was about to straddle him, I leaned in and whispered, "No one touches me without my permission." I pulled a pocket knife from my jeans on the floor and stabbed him in the throat. I grabbed my clothes, ran out the door, and never looked back. I later heard he now speaks with a trachea tube. Story 5. I worked for a company in college that hosted a big party every June for employees from all over Southern California. At my first party in 1994, I struck up a conversation with a guy whose girlfriend was a paralegal for Howard Weitzman, O.J. Simpson's attorney at the time. Nicole Brown Simpson had been murdered just days before this party, and the guy told me his girlfriend was in the room with Weitzman when O.J. called the day after the murder. It wasn't unusual for O.J. to call, so Weitzman put him on speakerphone. According to the guy, O.J. said, "I just killed my wife and the police are asking questions." At that point, Weitzman immediately picked up the receiver. After the call, Weitzman reportedly made the guy's girlfriend sign a document stating that everything she had heard was protected under attorney-client privilege. The guy seemed really distressed about the whole situation, though he was also drunk at the time. I brushed it off back then, thinking it was too far-fetched to be true. This was before the infamous car chase, trial, and all the details that later came to light. Story 6. When I was in my late teens, my father told me he wanted to take me to a museum at his workplace. Early the next morning, we got in the car, and as we drove, I asked why an electrical engineering firm would have a museum. That's when he told me he didn't work for Company X, and never had. He didn't elaborate further. I sat quietly, processing this, and started paying closer attention to what was happening. When we arrived, he pulled out a blue ID card with only his picture and a seal on it. After the guard inspected it and handed it back, my dad paid it to me with a smirk. That's when I realized my dad worked for the CIA. We spent the morning exploring the campus. He showed me what he called the coolest spy museum you'll never see, and even the cryptos installation. Since I spoke a few foreign languages, he took me to the old FBIS area, where I sifted through open-source materials. It was fascinating but surreal. Later, I began to piece things together. I realized we had once lived illegally in a Western European country. If the host nation had found out, my dad would have been arrested and likely traded diplomatically. He later explained that much of his career involved tracing money trails and laundering linked to terrorist groups. He shared some stories, including encounters with dangerous individuals. The most chilling thing he ever told me was about waking up to a 3 a.m. phone call, trying to remember what name he was using and what job he was pretending to have before answering. He's retired now, but I still don't talk about it openly. Too many details could lead to problems if names or locations were ever deduced. Story 7. I am watching my parents' previously healthy marriage unravel because my dad lost his job and can't return to the UAE. His boss is blaming him for decisions the boss himself made, decisions my dad had warned against. Now my dad faces the threat of jail if he tries to go back. Meanwhile, my mom is stuck in the country because she invested half their life savings into a failing business here. My dad secretly resents this, especially now that he no longer has his big job to support us. He just wants my mom to retire and relax with him, But my mom blames herself for starting the business at the wrong time. She's working herself into the ground trying to redeem herself, even though no one could have predicted the financial crash just 8 months later. She unloads all of her emotional baggage on me. The older son, who was once seen as the family's wonderkin, but is now just another guy struggling to keep afloat. I'm writing this during my fourth consecutive 16-hour workday. I won't get a weekend because my boss has unreasonable demands, and I need the job experience. On top of that, my mom needs me to help her prepare a 1-hour speech she's giving on Saturday, even though she's painfully shy. I'm also juggling endless calls to potential clients for her business. Some days I want to leave everything behind and disappear into a monastery for a while. But my dad would never forgive me for abandoning my mom, and no one outside the family knows any of this. Story 8. Back in 2004, I was in the Air Force station in Okinawa, Japan. I had just arrived in the capital city of Naha after boot camp and job training. My superiors, a staff sergeant and a tech sergeant, greeted me warmly at the airport and packed my stuff into a waiting vehicle. On the way to the base, they suddenly veered off the main road onto a sketchy side street. I asked, "Where are we going?" They responded, "Oh, we have to take you to this club first. Real high-class place. You'll like it. Once we're done, we'll drop you off at the barracks." We pulled into a narrow alley filled with trash and homeless people. The building itself looked run down, but I followed them in. Inside, the place was dark except for individual round tables with red tablecloths and a single lamp on each. As soon as we walked in, a man at the door confronted us. "You buy drink or leave. You buy drink and sit." My supervisors paid, and we sat at one of the tables. They were trying hard to suppress their laughter while I remained clueless about what was so funny. Then the spotlight hit the stage, and the curtains opened. Standing there was an elderly Asian woman, easily in her late 80s, completely naked. Imagine Yoda with saggy boobs and liver spots. The music started, and she strutted across the stage, pulling a banana out from behind the curtain. She peeled it, and I braced myself for the worst. She shoved the banana into herself, then continued walking confidently. What followed was unbelievable. She lifted her leg like a dog about to pee and let out a martial arts-style scream, "Yeah!" A slice of banana flew out of her and landed on a table in front of us. She repeated this until the banana was gone. To make matters worse, one of the drunk Marines in front of us grabbed a banana slice while his friends chanted, "Eat it, eat it, eat it," and he did. I sat there in stunned silence while my supervisors were on the floor laughing. To this day, it remains the biggest WTF moment of my life. Story 9. This is something I've never told anyone before. It was July 25th, 2000, an infamous date that made national news. I was walking down the street with some friends when we came across a Mave gate. We'd been drinking, and as we got closer, curiosity took over. We started wondering what could be on the other side. One of my friends, let's call him John, became completely fixated on it. While the rest of us kept walking, he stopped and attempted to climb over the 10-foot fence. John slipped and fell on his backside, and I could tell he was going to hurt himself if he kept trying. Being the most sober of the group, I tried to drag him away, but he wouldn't let it go. Finally, I convinced him to let me climb the gate and check out what was on the other side. When I got to the top, I perched there for a moment, looking back at John, who gave me a thumbs up and asked what I saw. What I saw was insane. They were everywhere. I was so shocked that I couldn't even form the words to describe it. I felt compelled to go over and get closer. When I landed on the other side, they all turned and made eye contact with me. I could sense they were silently pleading to be freed. Without hesitation, I started untying them. Once they were free, we quietly made our way back to the gate together. Just as we were about to escape, I tripped over some scrap metal, and a porch light flicked on. Panicked, I sprinted to catch up and unlock the gate as fast as I could. Throwing it open, we all scattered and ran in different directions, never to see each other again. I knew in my heart I had done something good that night. Yes, it was me. I was the one who let the dogs out. Storytime. When I was 19, I met a cute Asian girl at the gym. We started talking, and after building up some courage, I asked for her phone number. That's when I found out she was 24. Despite the age gap, I decided to be a man and pursue her anyway. Over time, we talked more and eventually started dating. But there were conditions. I had to be kept a secret from her family and friends because I was both younger and African American. We couldn't show any public displays of affection, And whenever we went out, I had to pretend to be her coworker. We could only spend time together at my place when my mom wasn't home. I couldn't even tell my friends about her. She paid for everything, dinners, movies, vacations, because I was broke at the time. Despite the challenges, I grew to love her, and she told me she loved me too. But one day she told me it had to end. She gave me a deadline, June. She explained that she couldn't have a future with me because her family wouldn't accept an African-American man. I didn't believe her at first, convincing myself that her feelings would overpower her decision. But when June came, she stopped replying to my texts, blocked me on AIM and Facebook, and avoided me completely at the sports club where we both worked out. We had been together for a year, and just like that, she was gone. Last week, I saw her at the gym with her new boyfriend, an Asian guy. I guess she found someone her family could accept. Story 11. My boss and I look really similar. We look almost like brothers or father and son. However, I am 3 inches taller than him, considerably skinnier, and while he is sort of the dumb sports guy, I am more of the smart, nerdy type. I go to barbecues at his house every once in a while and started to get to know his wife pretty well. She's in her early 30s, I'm in my late 20s, and he's in his 40s. At a weekend thing at his house, she approaches me privately, saying that my boss wants to have a child. That's nice. I think to myself until she tells me that she wants me to get her pregnant. At first I refuse her, as I don't want to lose my job. I really don't think I could find another that pays as well. Eventually she convinces me that he will never find out because we look so much alike. She tells me that since I'm taller, better looking, and smarter, she wants me to get her pregnant instead of him. We meet up 4 times over a couple weeks and I get to my boss's beautiful wife. Finally she's pregnant and she tells my boss that she is ready to try for a baby. 9 months later, my first son is born. My boss is thrilled and I feel horrible. Not only am I deceiving him, but this is my firstborn son and I will barely know him. 2 years later, he wants another child. By this time, I'm over the fact that their son is really mine. It is still weird, but they are good people. And I basically just think of myself as the sperm donor. Well, the time came again to donate. Their daughter was born 6 months ago, and their son is now 3. He looks a lot like me. I can see it in his eyes, but I can also see in those same eyes how much he loves his dad and how much his dad loves him. I have a girlfriend now, who I met about a year ago. I'm considering proposing and starting a real family of my own. I'm still not sure if I will ever tell her. Story 12. I have been a pawnbroker for 7 years. I see all kinds of crazy people and have heard every possible story I can imagine. One day a lady came in and needed to pawn her husband's wedding ring. She explained to me that he had recently paid away, and it was the only thing she had worth any money. The amount I could give was a meager $30, but it helped her out in her bind. While she didn't like to, she would bring in that ring every few weeks, borrow $30, and then return within a few weeks to reclaim her prized possession. This went on for about 3 years. Towards the end there, the ring tended to stay for more than a few weeks. The loan cycle is 90 days, and at the end, you can pay the accrued finance charges for another 90-day loan period. She needed to do this a few times because she was unable to come up with the full redemption amount. One day I was sorting jewelry from expired loans and realized her ring was expired by a few days. So I secretly hid the ring in the safe and changed the expiration date in the computer for another month. I desperately looked out for this woman to come into the store because I knew if she came in while my boss was there, he would be able to look up her account and see the modified date in the computer, and I would be busted. I knew that she would never abandon this treasure of hers, and my mind couldn't come up with a reason she would abandon the ring. Then the day came. She came in. I explained to her in secret that I had held on to her ring so that she could renew or redeem it. She was thankful, but explained that she had been desperately trying to come up with the money to pay for it, but she had no luck coming up with it. I told her I would hang on to it for a little while longer and explained that I would lose my job if I was caught. She said she would be back the very next day with the money for it, guaranteed. I said, no worries, get it as soon as you can. I'll hang on to it. The next day came and went. She never showed up. After 4 days, I was struggling once again with what to do about the situation, and she walked in. Now at this time, I felt a great weight of empathy for this woman. She reminded me so much of my own deceased mother, and I swear every time I looked upon her, I saw my own mother, if things were different. Over those 3 years, I saw this woman's life degrade so much. It is the saddest tale I have ever witnessed unfold in reality. She explained to me that she still had no money. And as for her reason for not showing up the day she said she would, she told me she was busted in Portland for attempting prostitution. She had had no luck trying to work the streets for a measly $18 and change, the amount of interest owed for this loan at this point, and instead ended up in jail with criminal charges. That was one of the most terrible things I could imagine. What a sick twist of fate. I told her as long as it takes, I will hang on to it, no matter what. As soon as you are able, come pay the finance charges or redeem it, whatever you are able to come up with. But don't worry, I will hold on to it. Looking back, I wish I could have done more. If only I wasn't so damn poor myself. I blame my girlfriend at the time. She was expensive. I would have just paid for it out of my own pocket. It was one more week till payday. Then I was going to pay it myself, whether she had the money or not. At this point, I felt the most important thing was making sure she kept this ring. That was the last time I ever saw her. I read the news online every single day. The next day, I read an article that blew my mind and wounded my heart forever. She had apparently left the pawn shop and drove far away to the Oregon coast and walked into the ocean and drowned. I realized at this point that the value of human life is worth more than $18 and change. To this day, I carry a $20 bill in my wallet with her name on it. The next time I can save a life for $20, I have it covered. I ended up purchasing the ring for myself, and it is one of my most coveted treasures. If only there was more I could do. Story 13. There was this very charming, brilliant surgeon that used to work in the hospital that I volunteered at. His dexterity is a gift from God. While being an extremely skillful surgeon, his bedside manner is impeccable. His fellow doctors love him, nurses adore him, patients worship him. Hell, even us volunteers are willing to give a kidney to shadow him. However, he's also an alcoholic. And when I say alcoholic, I mean he would go get trashed after work, 5 times a week, day or night. Depends on his call schedule. When he's not in the hospital, he would be in a bar. There was a time around 2 a.m. in the morning, while I was walking home from my girlfriend's, I saw a man lying face up next to a trash can. You can smell the stink of hard liquor and vomit 10 feet away from that man. Worried that the man might choke on his own vomit, I quickly ran to him and turned him over to the side. Imagine my surprise when I saw his face under that dim, shimmering street light. At first I thought he was out cold, but as I leaned forward, I realized he was murmuring a name. Let's say Fiona. I didn't know what to do with him. Neither calling the cops or the hospital would do anything beneficial for him, so I dragged his body to a park bench and left him there. Later, I found out that Fiona was the first patient he lost during his career due to a judgment call. Story 14. I used to work as the doorman, security for a local bar. One night, a bunch of the employees got together at the bar next door for one of the servers' birthdays while I worked the night shift. All the bars and restaurants closed at 2 a.m., so after kicking out all the drunks, I left. As I walked through the parking lot, I noticed someone sitting in the gray, leaned against a car in the dark. It turned out to be one of the servers from next door, a loner who often got picked on for being a little off. He was completely covered in puke, as was the inside of his car, which he was trying to climb into to pie out. Deciding to help, I told him to sneak around to the back of the restaurant by the dumpster, and I'd meet him there. I made up a story to get back inside, where the employees were still cleaning up, and then went out the back door. I cranked the water hose on full blast, snaked it under the gate, and cleaned him up without anyone seeing us. I grabbed some server towels to soak up the mess in his car and made sure he could sleep it off. He paid out in his car, and we never spoke of it again. I knew he'd never hear the end of it if anyone else found out. Story 15. I'm a quiet, articulate, and polite guy who doesn't like sports and prefers the company of women over men. Because of that, when I was a freshman in college, nearly everyone assumed I was gay. I wasn't flamboyant or anything, but people rarely asked outright. When they did, I'd just say I was straight. The funny part is that I knew plenty of gay guys, and even they thought it was hilarious that people assumed I was one of them. Because of this perception, a lot of guys didn't mind their girlfriends hanging out in my dorm room while they drank and watched football or hockey games. My dorm room became the go-to place for girls to hang out, and I wasn't about to discourage it. Long story short, I ended up sleeping with 7 girls over 9 months, all girlfriends of these trusting, naive guys. This included the girlfriends of my RA, my roommate, and the guy in the room next door. Essentially, I was a man whore who exploited the option that I was gay to sneak under their radar and hook up with their women. Story 16. I'm planning to run away. I know my girlfriend is planning to leave me. It's for technical reasons mostly, circumstances beyond our control, and neither of us can really stop it. The alternatives are just too difficult for a relationship this young to handle. We decided to enjoy a few good months before it happens. But honestly, knowing she'll leave has put a damper on things. And I'm still waiting for the good to kick in. When she leaves, I won't have much keeping me grounded. I'm far from my family. I don't have those super close friends anymore, the ones you can call when something's wrong. And I'm tired of my current environment. So I'm planning to pack up my stuff, cancel my lease, grab a train ticket and disappear for a while. I've done it before, and I'll do it again. It might be a few months, or maybe longer. I've even applied for a papour, just in case. Story 17. This is a secret only me and my great-uncle know of. After the situation, he told me not to tell anyone what happened, because he could be thrown into prison for what he did. When I was a young age, at about 5 to 6, I couldn't sleep. My great-uncle used to take me for walks to get me tired and put me to sleep. One night it was sometime in winter where it's always icy and cold in England. He took me for a walk at about 3 a.m. I lived in a rough neighborhood when I was a kid, and as we were walking home, a man came at me with a knife. He threatened to stab me unless my great-uncle gave him money. We had little to no money at the time, hence living in a bad home. My great-uncle, who was about 6 feet 2 at the time, refused to give him any money, jolted forward and headbutted this man, causing him to slip on an icy curb, crack his skull off it, and die. My great-uncle took my hand and took me home as quick as he could. He told me not to tell anyone in case of him being thrown into prison. Of course, I never told anyone until this very moment. My great-uncle paid away sometime last year, and I'll never forget the things he did for me. Story 18. I was in a long relationship with my ex-girlfriend, almost 8 years. We even lived together. At the end, we have problems like any other couple. Nothing we could not fix, but my company hired a new girl, and we end up fing, and she got pregnant. So I had to end with my GF saying that our problems didn't have solution. Lies, I still loved her and wanted to be with her. So she does not know the real reason. So I talked with the new girl, and we decided to have an abortion. The problem was that where we live abortion is against the law, so we end up in a SHTII legal hospital, if you can call it that, and she got the job done. And that's where our real problem started. The job was not do it correctly, and she have had a lot of medical problems. That was 9 months ago, and she still have a lot of health problems. We have spent a lot of money in private clinics and doctors. I have been with her all this time because the problems she has now are also my fault. And after 9 months, she has started to feel things for me. She says she loves me, but I don't feel the same. If I leave her now, she would not be able to cover the expenses of the private doctors. I'm with her for the little sense of responsibility that I have left. Besides the new girl and me, nobody knows this. And what I only know is that I'm still in love with my ex-girlfriend, and I want to be back with her, and she wants to be with me too. I'm stuck in this, and it's all my fault that 2 girls are suffering for this. I'm the worst scumbag of this world. Story 19. I almost had S with my best friend's mom. She's one of those ladies that's actually still very attractive for her age. Best friend is a girl, I'm a guy. Anyway, my best friend and I have been really close for about 10 years now. We've played in bands together, written music together, etc., and literally are strictly platonic friends. If something was going to happen, it would have happened by now. As you may aume, I'm also very close to her family, which consists of her mom and little sister, who's about 15 now. She and I are 26 and 24, respectively. At some point in 2011, the mom is having problems with her boyfriend at the time. We'd already made plans to catch dinner at a tapas restaurant in town the day things went south for them. We were going there to see one of her musician friends play guitar with this Latin jazz group. It was legit. It's just a normal at dinner, a guy in his 20s and a lady in her 40s. I even got our waitress's phone number, etc. Everything was totally fine. She drinks so rarely, you might as well say she never drinks. But tonight she had gotten into some sangria. Totally harmless, right? I'd had some beers or WE, nothing crazy. We drove there in her car, and she admitted that she wanted me to drive back to the house because she wasn't in condition to drive. She has no tolerance, 1 sangria, and she was pretty well off. So I drive us back to the house while tipsy myself. Now I'd ridden my motorcycle over to the house, 2008 GSXR 600 if anyone cares. So I wasn't about to hop on my steed and ride home until I felt I was completely sober. So she starts getting ready for bed, and I'm scoping out a place to lay down for a while I sober up. But she's highly disorganized and scatterbrained. There was all kinds of crafts in the living room, couch totally occupied by stuff that was going to be sold at a yard sale the next day, etc. So she suggests just laying in bed with her as she's going to fall asleep quick anyway. NBD. Also, the little sister's out of the house, her dad, divorced and such. My best friend lives in Tennessee at the time. We're in Florida. So I shrug and say, what the hell, NBD? She's practically family, and I've shared beds with people I have way less attachment to. I had a difficult time sleeping if I'm not in just my boxer briefs, so I get down to the skivvies and hop in bed. I'm not sure what was really happening in my mind, but we kind of start cuddling, spooning, etc. I'm starting to think this is weird and back off and just lay there on my back, looking up at the ceiling, and how weird this already is, and how I can't tell my best friend. Then, she pulls down her little nightie thing, exposing her amazing implanted breasts, and tells me she wants me to make her feel good. So without missing a beat, I do as I'm told. Kissing, sucking, fingering her, etc., etc. As things intensify, I position myself to do the deed and have a moment of clarity, foolishness, and stop myself and tell her that we probably shouldn't do this and that I should probably go. She's disappointed but agrees, and we make out some before I get off the bed and start getting dressed. I go into the bathroom to just kind of wash my face, etc., and just kind of get some perspective on what just happened, and I smell the most god-awful rotten stench on the fingers that had been inside her. Soap and water didn't help that go away, so I had to deal. I almost vomited. So I put my motorcycle gear on and tell her to have a good night, or WE and GTFO. That night riding home, I felt pretty bad at having just walked away from that situation, but also for having been in the situation, and I was riding a motorcycle. My fingers stunk for like another day or so. I should also make mention that she would have been the second woman I'd had us with. Story 20. I doubt anyone will read this, but I want to get it off my chest. I exist only because of an accidental teenage pregnancy. My dad was 16 and my mom was 17. My biological mom wasn't mature enough to handle a baby, so she left me with her mother to raise me. Eventually, my grandparents adopted me when I was 3. During all this, my dad wanted to take care of me. He knew that her parents wouldn't raise me well and wanted to make sure I was all right. I wasn't. Being raised by my grandparents, I was ostracized and treated as a general outcast from the family. I suffered emotional, verbal, and physical abuse at the hands of my grandparents. I attempted suicide and developed an eating disorder, anxiety, and self-esteem issues because of the constant bullying by my grandfather and his daughter. Nobody knows that I'm aware of the custody battle between him and my grandparents. It didn't last long, but I would have grown up to be much happier and more well-adjusted if they had just let him raise me. Getting to know my dad now that I'm an adult, I realize how alike we are and how much happier I would have been. Now I have to make up for lost time. Story 21. I was married for 15 years. I started cheating on my wife after she became addicted to painkillers. She got clean and caught me cheating. We started going to counseling, but I started cheating again and began planning a divorce, all while she thought I was working things out, or so I thought. Over the next year, while we were telling each other we were working things out and seeing a counselor, she met a guy in another state through the internet. She started having online S with him and eventually arranged to visit him for a week. She told me she was visiting an old high school friend. I believed her and made plans to be with my girlfriend while she was gone. While with her boyfriend, they did some drugs. It wasn't much, but they reacted badly with her prescription meds. She went into cardiac arrest, the ambulance was called, and she died on the way to the hospital. The death certificate says heart attack, but our family doctor explained it was likely caused by the drug interaction. The police questioned him but didn't charge him. I refused to press charges. I felt he was already living with this horror. I got the call from the police while I was in my girlfriend's bed. I had her cremated and scattered her ashes at her favorite place, with our families present. It was a private ceremony. I spent the next year in therapy dealing with the guilt. 4 years later, I married the woman I was cheating with. That was 2 years ago, and I'm extremely happy. She knows everything, and she's the only one who does besides you reading this now. I still feel the guilt. Story 22. Hmm, this is going to be the absolute first time I have ever said, or, well, written this in my entire life. I will probably never mention it again. I'm doing this to see how I feel. Let's start off by saying I think I'm actually messed up in the head. Like I seriously have something broken in me emotionally. Because normally when kids have traumatic things happen to them, they turn out screwed up. But I don't feel screwed up, and I'm really worried about it. I think I'd feel better if someone just told me, dude, you're crazy. You need to see someone. But nobody ever says anything, so I all me I'm normal. I'm a guy, by the way. But you may ask, well, what happened? Okay, well, when I was younger, not sure how young, but really young, my older brother somehow convinced me that sleeping together naked was normal. That, of course, led to molestation and essentially rape. It's kind of fuzzy. This happened constantly. I was convinced it was normal, so I never brought it up or had any issues. The only reason it stopped was that he used to finish elsewhere, but then he started finishing on me. I thought it was thick pee, and my only logic at the time was that even if what we were doing was normal, peeing on someone didn't seem normal. So I confronted him, said I didn't want to do this anymore, and threatened to tell someone that he was peeing on me. It stopped. A few years later, my mom took the family savings, gambled it all away, and cheated on my dad. One night she came home and confessed everything. I was in the kitchen. My parents had a huge fight. My mom told me to look after my sister, then went to the kitchen and started slicing herself. She didn't manage to kill herself, but now she's medicated and a little crazy. These are the two big stories. I have others, like being drugged by someone and waking up naked. Or my friends telling me I got drunk, took on an entirely new personality, and didn't recognize anyone. Yet here I am, living a normal life, married with friends, etc. I feel unfazed, but that kind of freaks me out. I read about people going through one major thing and needing therapy for years. Meanwhile, I feel nothing. Story 23. I used to be a cop. Back in the early 1990s, when most police departments were transitioning from revolvers to semi-automatic pistols, we went through transitional school to learn how to use the new sidearms. 6 months after I switched from a .357 Magnum to a 9mm Smith & Wesson semi-automatic pistol, I pulled a driver over for speeding, something like 50 in a 35 zone. This was before dash cams were installed in police cars and laptops were still years away. I called in the plate as usual and exited my car to approach the driver. As I reached the driver's door, the window slowly rolled down. At that exact moment, my dispatcher radioed to tell me the vehicle was wanted in connection to a drive-by shooting and homicide. Panicking, I quickly drew my weapon. As I raised it, my finger accidentally pulled the trigger. The gun fired, and the bullet hit the dashboard, punching a hole in the speedometer and scattering plastic fragments all over the driver. As the ringing in my ears subsided, the dispatcher came back on the radio and told me to disregard her last message. She had transposed some numbers, and the car wasn't wanted after all. Horrified, I lowered the gun and spewed apologies to the driver. I got him out of the car to examine the damage. His 2-month-old Lexus LS 400's instruments were flickering. Without giving him much time to think, I asked him to follow me to an ATM, where I withdrew $1,000 to pay for the damage and keep it a secret. He took the money and I never heard from him again. I forgot the golden rule of keeping your finger outside the trigger guard until you intend to fire. I left law enforcement for emergency medicine because I never wanted to risk shooting someone again. Story 24. Throwaway because I can't have people finding this out. I'm a Maeve sleepwalker and have done some crazy things, but this is the first time this happened, and hopefully the last. I was on holiday with a bunch of friends. We got absolutely steaming drunk and somehow stumbled back to our room unhurt before going to bed. So far, so good. I was dreaming happily, having some weird dream about playing pranks on my friends. In the dream, I was taking a dump on my friend's bed. No idea why. Then I woke up in that half-aware state where your body knows you need to wake up, but your brain won't listen. That's when I started to feel something wet. The smell hit me next. Horrendous. Like sewer dog poop mixed with vodka. I realized I was sitting in a kitchen cupboard on the middle shelf, which had snapped in half under my weight. There was piss everywhere, and I was literally sitting on the worst pile of shesh I'd ever done. Panicked, I checked on the friend I was sharing the room with. Thankfully, he was still asleep, despite the stench. I rushed back, grabbed some toilet paper, and started cleaning like a madman. I knew I was on a timer because no one could sleep through that smell for long. Eventually, I got it cleaned up, but some of the mess had gotten under the cupboard. I had to lift the whole thing to wipe it down. Then it hit me. I had to fix the broken shelf. I somehow managed to balance it back together, shut the cupboard doors, and lock them. Story 25. The second I saw this post, I knew exactly what I wanted to share. Two people in my college friend group started hooking up casually. Think friends with benefits with more booze. We'll call her the girl, and him the guy. The girl was a close friend of my then girlfriend, and the guy was my rugby teammate and good friend. After a few months, the guy moved on to hooking up with other girls. One night I noticed the girl was visibly upset. I yawmed it was because she knew he was seeing other women. Later that night, after getting drunk, she confided in me. She told me she was pregnant with his child and had an abortion without telling anyone except her mother, who had recently disowned her. She was devastated, feeling alone and rejected, and I tried to comfort her. I encouraged her to seek professional help and counseling. She made me swear never to tell anyone. Not my girlfriend, not the guy, no one. It's been 5 years since then. She moved out of state, but I still see my rugby buddy regularly. I've kept the secret all this time, but it's been a heavy burden. It feels good to finally share it. Story 26. I was in 3rd grade and had just mastered the art of lying. My parents were uneasy about me walking to my friend's house around the corner alone, but I did it anyway. When I came back for absolutely no reason, I lied and said a stranger had asked me to get into a van with him. I said he needed help finding his lost puppy and promised me a Pokemon card, a holographic Chansey, in return. My parents freaked out. My dad, a cop, started asking me questions. I said the van was black and the man was bald. He launched a full investigation, and soon, all the cops in town were looking for this guy. A week later, our school had an embly about child abduction. They even said, a student of ours was recently approached by a strange man. Teachers came up to me afterward, asking if I was okay. I sat through it all with the most innocent poker face ever. A full police investigation and a school embly, all over a lie I made up on the spot. To this day, no one knows the truth, except a few friends. We got stoned once, and I told them. They laughed, saying, I remember that thing, embly. Story 27. I went on a trip with my friend through Italy. We stayed at a hostel. He met an Italian girl, got drunk with her, and they came back to the hostel and had S in the hostel room. The hostel room had about 10 people sleeping in it, including me. Everyone could see each other because the beds were arranged in a circle. They decided to bang with all of us watching. They were drunk and didn't care. While they were at it, the girl kept repeating something loudly in Italian. I didn't understand what she was saying. After they finished, they both left to smoke outside. Some people in the room started laughing as soon as they left. They were laughing at the fact that my friend had S's in front of everyone, but then the girl in the bed next to me translated what the Italian girl had been saying. Apparently, she was repeatedly saying little d in Italian. My friend thought she was whispering hot, dirty things to him, but she was mocking his size. The next day, my friend tried asking others what she had been saying, but luckily no one told him. He felt like the man after that night, so I didn't want to burst his bubble. Story 28. I believe my ex-girlfriend's husband killed her. We were each other's first loves, dating from ages 15 to 21. Our relationship was painate but toxic. She was anorexic, bulimic, and had severe mental health issues. She used to provoke me to hit her. It was incredibly dysfunctional and abusive on both sides. Eventually it ended. I grew out of my issues, but I never forgot her. Fast forward 10 years, I was back in my hometown for Christmas and ran into her at the grocery store. We had an awkward conversation in the parking lot. She laughed nervously and told me, I'm still crazy. I'm in a horrible marriage. I told her to leave and start over. She got serious and said, if I tried to leave, he would kill me. I left feeling sorry for her, but also relieved that I wasn't the one dealing with her issues anymore. 5 years later, I heard she was dead. I reached out to her family to pay my respects and learn what happened. Her sister started crying when she heard it was me and shared that my ex had endured years of domestic abuse. Broken bones with no good excuses, the works. Her sister told me my ex once said, I'd never kill myself, so be suspicious if I do. Just a month before her death. The body was cremated and no investigation followed. I wrote a letter to the chief of police in her town, sharing what I knew and urging them to be suspicious if the man's current wife ever suffers the same fate. I've moved on with my life and am happy now, but I still feel guilt. I wish I had done more to help her. Story 29. It was my younger friend's first time drinking at a college party. She blacked out, so we carried her back to my apartment, planning to let her crash on my bed while I kept an eye on her. The next morning, I found my bed empty and almost she had left. Then I heard a noise from the bathroom. I knocked on the door to check on her and was greeted by an absolute nightmare. The bathroom was covered in show, on the floor, the toilet, even the walls. It looked like an asylum patient had been locked in there for the night. At first, I thought one of the partygoers was responsible. I didn't want to embarrass her, so I pretended to think it was the party kids who had trashed the bathroom. But then I found the culprit, a stained white bandeau tucked behind the toilet. It was obviously hers. I spent the entire day cleaning and sanitizing the bathroom. The dried-up eshish had to be scraped off surfaces, and the smell was unbearable. Later, I discovered she had mistaken my apartment mate's bed for mine in her drunken state. That explained why their room smelled so vile. There were SH stains and flakes all over their down blanket. I deep cleaned everything to make sure no one ever found out. To this day, we have a silent understanding about that night. Whenever I see her at parties, she jokes about limiting herself to only a few shots. Story 30. This will most likely get buried, but this will now be known to all of you. The 5 friends I experienced it with, my girlfriend, my mom, were close, and no one else. 5 friends and I set out on an adventure to see a concert. The concert was in one city, but since we had a day to kill, we decided to visit a big city about an hour away. None of us were from a big city, so we thought it'd be a great chance to explore, have some beers, relax in a nice hotel, and maybe play cards. Here's what actually happened. We bought 90 beers, stayed in one of the nicest hotels I've ever seen, and played the most ridiculous drinking game ever. This eventually led to the idea of sneaking some of our younger friends into a strip club. When that didn't work, someone suggested bringing strippers to us. That's when Craigslist became the solution. We stumbled upon a decent-looking stripper named Nancy. Everyone agreed, the call was made, and the waiting began. At this point, we were all completely wasted. Being in a relationship, I initially opted out of the stripper situation. I decided to hit up a bar, meet some locals, and come back later. As I was heading out, there was a knock at the door. I opened it, and what I saw was beyond words. First, a tiny overweight girl walked in, followed by a 6-foot-tall woman with a hair lip. The smaller one was borderline midget height, but probably weighed 130 pounds. They stepped in, and when I turned to look at my friends, their disappointed expressions said it all. As I left, I heard, "So, which one of you boys is the 19-year-old?" I collapsed in the hallway laughing. After a smoke, I decided this was too funny to miss and went back. When I returned, the midget was completely naked, riding my buddy on a table. James Brown was playing off a laptop, and another friend was casually chatting with the lady pimp. I sat down and started DJing this surreal scene, playing more James Brown. Nancy proceeded to bounce her A on everyone in the room except me. Meanwhile, I chatted with the lady pimp about her life. She was surprisingly chill. At one point, I asked if she could get me drugs for the concert. She made a call, said she needed $80, and promised to return with what I wanted. She left Nancy as collateral. Drunk me thought, great, score. About 20 minutes later, Nancy began telling us her life story. Turns out she had met the lady pimp just an hour before arriving. The lady pimp had given her crack to smoke, and Nancy had no idea who she really was. She confessed she had run away from home and was only 18. Panic set in. We realized we had wasted $200 on the stripper and $80 on drugs that never came. The horrific details of Nancy's life made everything worse. We, a group of drunk idiots, started fighting with each other, eventually staying up until 4 a.m., discussing life on a deep existential level. The next day's hangover was legendary. All I wanted was to be home with my girlfriend, who luckily found the story hilarious and called us all idiots. We were idiots. The funny thing is, we're all down-to-earth students. If you met us, you'd never think we were capable of this level of dummery. Lesson learned. I hope our stupidity provides some entertainment. Story 31. Kind of a long story, but I feel like I was brainwashed for the first 20 years of my life. When I was 4 years old, my dad and mom got into a physical fight where my dad tried to kill my mom and then tried to hurt me when I intervened. They divorced after that, and I never saw my dad again. Now, don't get me wrong. I respect my mom for raising 2 kids as a single mother all these years, but I also resent her. When I was a kid, her side of the family always treated me like crap over anything they could. Discipline was constant. My sister, on the other hand, was treated like royalty. I theorize now that it's because I resemble my father a bit, and they hate him for what he did to my mom. After looking him up on Google in high school, I also realized I was named after him, which pretty much confirmed my suspicion. My family is big on law careers, and when I was a kid, I loved playing video games in my free time, but they constantly discouraged me from gaming. By high school, I wanted to become a game designer, but I struggled with math. My mom's idea of helping was to berate me for hours, telling me how dumb I was for not understanding things. After years of this, my confidence in math plummeted, and eventually I gave up on it, and on my dream of designing video games. My mom kept pushing me to become a cop or lawyer. By freshman year of college, I was completely brainwashed. I majored in criminal law, despite never wanting to be a police officer or work in law for moral reasons. For 3.5 years, I went along with it without seriously questioning myself. Then a few months ago, I finally woke up. I owe this to my little sister. Even though she's spoiled, she was the only one who ever said, "Why do you do everything mom tells you to do? You even go to the college she chose and do the career she told you to." That really hit me. I recently told my mom that I don't want to work as a lawyer or in corrections for moral reasons. She was very disappointed. I told her I would finish my degree since I'm already in my 4th year, but I didn't tell her my big secret. For the past 2 months, I've been teaching myself programming and math. Thanks to Reddit, this site is a goldmine if you know where to look. I've been researching jobs in the gaming industry and figuring out what it takes to get my foot in the door. I've planned out things I can do to make my resume appealing, and am considering interning at gaming companies this summer if I learn enough coding by then. I haven't told my mom anything about my aspirations to work in gaming. She would probably kick me out if she knew, because she has always hated video games and used to scream at me just for mentioning them. No one knows about this yet. For the first 20 years of my life, I feel like I never truly lived for myself. I always did things to make my mom and family happy because she seemed so stressed out. But when I realized my sister did none of that, I thought, she does what she wants when she wants. Why can't I do that too? Story 32. Okay, this requires a little backstory. My girlfriend's father is a Baptist minister. He's the stereotypical fags are going to hell bigoted type. Even though she and I have lived together for a couple of years, we've been friends for much longer, so her father has no idea that I'm gay and she's bi. We rarely see him and figure it's none of his business. She doesn't want to deal with the inevitable fallout. He already criticizes her for not attending church regularly. Occasionally, he asks her to help with functions at his church. I usually go with her to make it easier on her. Last year, during their big Easter event, a group nearby got into a conversation about marriage equality. Her father eagerly joined in, spouting the usual rhetoric about homosexuality being unnatural and sinful. It was all the same hateful bullshit, but hearing it still made my blood boil. I gritted my teeth to keep from making a scene for her sake, but I was livid. Later, while we were taking things back to his office, I noticed a large cross on his desk. In a purely impulsive moment, I grabbed it. My girlfriend saw me holding it, and before she could say anything, I told her I needed to use the restroom. In a stall, I masturbated with the cross. It was quick but satisfying because I was channeling all my anger into defiling something he held sacred. When I was done, I returned it to his desk. He must have handled it daily since then, and the thought of it makes me laugh because he'd probably have a coronary if he knew. Since then, whenever my girlfriend has been guilted into helping with his church events, I've gone along and chosen another of his personal items to defile. It's become our private joke, and we laugh about it every time. Story 33. I slept with a co-worker of mine for a few months. She liked me because I was the quiet type, and at the time, I was pretty new to physical relationships. It lasted about 4 months, but then she became distant and started trying to get me removed from the division. Navy. Everyone sided with her because they all partied with her and basically drooled over her. Eventually, she got caught sleeping with a higher-ranking supervisor, and everyone backed off of me. She was later stationed on an aircraft carrier, where she ended up sleeping with a married chief. She was kicked out of the Navy for it. This girl made my life a living hell for 2 years, but she never knew how she got caught sleeping with the married chief. She didn't realize she had the easiest Facebook password imaginable. She used to log into her email on my computer when we were still on good terms, so her account would pop up when I was logging in. When things started going south, I guessed her password one day out of boredom and almost had a heart attack when I got logged in. I snooped and found out not only how she really felt about me, but also her exchanges with the guy 4 ranks higher. Out of complete spite, I forwarded the messages to the guy's wife. The guy was kicked out of the Navy and divorced. I feel bad about it to this day, but I also felt like his wife deserved to know. She's now living with the first supervisor she got caught with. I haven't spoken to her since. I hope she's doing well, but if she ever found out what I did, I'm pretty sure she'd find a way to kill me. I haven't been in a relationship since. Honestly, I'm too scared of them now. Story 34. A few years ago, my great aunt was in a terrible car accident caused by a jerk in a PT Cruiser rear-ending her at 98 miles per hour. Her car flipped and caught fire. We were told she had died on impact. The day after her death, I was in my PEKLA feeling devastated. That side of my family doesn't care for me much, but she was one of the few who treated me with kindness and love. While I was sitting there, I overheard my coach talking to 2 other coaches. "You guys heard about that terrible accident yesterday on highway?" "Yeah, my wife's boss was there." "It was awful. Apparently, he saw the woman burning alive trying to pat out the fire. Everyone was trying to pull her out or put out the fire, but it was too intense." Hearing this, I started freaking out and bawling. My coach asked me what was wrong, and I told him it was my great aunt. I also told him that my family had been told she died on impact. He excused me for the rest of the day. When my dad picked me up from school, I told him everything. He's the only other person who knows. We've kept it from the rest of the family because we know it would absolutely wreck them to learn that she suffered in her final moments. It feels so good to finally get this off my chest. Thank you for asking this question. I've never told anyone else except my dad. Story 35. I was born in England but raised in Colombia. While in high school, I met this gorgeous Colombian girl. She was 16 and I was 17 at the time. We dated for a while, but she always told me that if her dad arrived home, I should pretend to be her Clement. I found it odd, but he was just overprotective. Over time, I started to wonder what her dad did for a living. They were pretty well off, and he often went on weekly business trips. One night, while drinking with my high school friends, I saw him pulling into a bar nearby. Out of curiosity, I decided to sneak over and see what he was up to. As I got closer, I overheard him talking with another man, roughly his age, in his 40s. He said, "We have to kill this motherfucker. He's stealing from us." It sounded like something straight out of a gangster film. Shaken, I went back to my friends without saying a word. Week later, I was at my girlfriend's house during an informal business gathering. Her dad was sitting with 4 other men, all around his age. To my surprise, one of them was my friend Julian's dad. Julian's dad greeted me casually before continuing to chat with the group. 2 weeks later, I got a call from a friend saying that Julian's dad had been shot outside a bakery in my town. Everyone was gathering at the funeral home to say their goodbyes. At the funeral, I supported Julian and his family, but something didn't sit right with me. I remembered what my girlfriend's dad had said weeks earlier and the odd coincidence of seeing Julian's dad at that gathering. Months paid, and I had been dating my girlfriend for over a year. One weekend, we were at a friend's place drinking late into the night. Around 3 a.m., she was very drunk, and we were bored, so we decided to play Truth or Dare. I wasn't too interested in the game, but decided to ask her something I had been curious about for a long time. I asked her, "What does your father really do?" She hesitated, but eventually said she felt safe enough to tell me. She confessed that her dad was a drug lord. The gathering I had witnessed was one of their meetings to discuss production, costs, and transportation. I was shocked but didn't press her further. A while later, I moved back to Europe and lost contact with her and her family. I haven't heard anything about them since. To this day, I feel deeply troubled knowing that I'm almost certain who was responsible for Julian's dad's death. I've never told anyone about this, until now. It feels good to finally let it out.